So here we are, back to SPQR. In this case, damned if I know what the battle's called, but it's not Kanai. This is Veseris. Now I believe this came out on Via Victus. I may be mistaken, but it was available on the GMT site and playable with the counters that I have, which probably it means it's also available to those with the deluxe edition. I would guess. It didn't require anything from a C3I as far as I know. It just required the basic game, and I'm trying to see what else. I can't quite remember. Africanus, I believe. I know that. But I'm not sure what else. One of the other expansions. But chances are very good that this would be playable with what's in the deluxe edition. I can't imagine that those pieces wouldn't be there. So the situation's an interesting one. First of all, this is way back. This is the earliest scenario I have, 340 BC. This is Romans against the Latin allies. The Latin allies had taken up and attacked the Samnites without Roman acceptance. And the Samnites came to Rome and said, "Hey, help us." And the allies came and said, "No, we want to be on an equal footing, and we think at least one consul out of each election should be from the Latin allies." Anyway, Rome didn't like that. No doubt there. What's interesting here is to go to back when we played Osculum, I believe it is, from Pyrrhic Victory, and also in the designer's edition, I think. We had one particular leader, Decius Mus. He is the secondary consul in this case. The first one is Manlius. Basically, the two of them, according to Livy, came to an agreement that whichever one's flank in the command was failing first would ride out and kill himself in the midst of the enemy. That's one interesting factor of this. And unlike in Osculum, in this one, Decius Mus actually does so. For that matter, Manlius is kind of an interesting fellow who rode out and in a battle against the Celts and did a one-on-one combat. This is not the one we just handled. Won the battle and was wearing the torque from then on. This was his third consulship. The other interesting part about him is his son sort of disobeyed his orders by attacking and winning a battle after having conducted a hand-to-hand combat against one of the Latin leaders, and I believe he had his son executed for it. These are rough guys. Anyway, what's one of the particularly interesting factors for this, outside of in terms of gameplay, there's a couple of things. One is the Decius Mus factor, which historically happened in this battle. Either of the consuls can ride out and basically kill themselves in order to strengthen the morale of the Romans. There's no counteracting this in this scenario, except that the dream which led them to make this decision says that either army's leader could have done this. I'm probably not going to use this, but there is a set of rules for got Livius here, but that's not his name. His name is Numicius, killing himself first and having the opposite effect on the Romans. Of course, that would leave the Latins without a leader, without an overall commander, and there's a replacement who will step up into his place, probably significantly less. I'm not going to use that, but that may be something of a balancing factor. Speaking of balance, this is supposedly a fairly even battle, and it would make sense, because what we have is two consular legions facing about the same force. But it's two consular legions without the allies, because the allies are over here. So what you have is legionary infantry facing legionary infantry. The Romans are strictly required to follow the Triarii rules unless the Latins commit their Triarii. And their line of Triarii, as you can see, is quite small compared to the Roman line. The Roman line is bolstered by some Samnite allies, and there's some Samnite cavalry to help make up for the disparity, because the Latins, the allied forces, are always a greater group of cav compared to the Roman cavalry. All very interesting. Little modifiers, the prefect secretaries or whatever, which are assigned, all the leaders are Roman, and all the units which are assigned to the Latins will have 1 point greater initiative than they normally would. Just, I don't know, for whatever reason, to make it maybe more balanced. And what else? I think that's, I wanted to mention the Velites. Again, the Romans have a larger number of Velites than the Latins do, but the Latins slightly outnumber them on pure legionary units, which could be a major factor. Now, this battle actually, historically, from Livy's description, others doubt its veracity entirely, was very, very close. Both sides committed their Triarii lines, and the Romans won that way. And it could not have been a devastating victory, because the Latins were able to bring another army up after the battle. The tactical quality levels are, I believe, 150 to 151. So both armies have to take about the same damage to break. They're also about equivalent in terms of the quality of the forces themselves. We see a lot of tactical quality, half or 6, half or 5 over on the Latins. For the Romans, 6, 5, 5, 6, so about equal. Of course, the Principes are a little bit better than the Hastari. So you have a slightly greater quality on the actual Roman side, which goes against Livy. Livy claimed actually that the allies were more feared in this battle. Their cohorts were more feared than the Roman ones, which kind of disturbs me a little bit, but we'll see how it plays out and just how even it is. All right, might as well get started. We're in the opening stages of the battle. We see the Latins have moved some of their cav forward. One thing I said a little earlier, that this was a Via Victus. I'm not sure that it is. I don't know where this came from. It may be a GMT offering of some sort or another. I found the one that I have from Via Victus, which is Road to Beneventum. This one I'm not really sure, and I can't look it up online because my connection's kind of screwed right now. But then the Romans launched their Velites line, and instead of engaging the Velites with Velites, they've decided to stand at a slight distance and just toss javelins. A little different from how I've usually played. I'm not quite sure how the Latins are going to respond to this, but they're clearly outnumbered on this line, and they also got outdiced, heavily outdiced. You can see that by the number of units with low missile markers. Basically, anybody who didn't get a low missile got a successful hit. So you can get some sort of numerical concept there, because we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units, one with a no missile from the Latins, whereas only 2 got low missiles from the Romans, which means a lot of hits against the Latins. Latins have to decide what they're doing. They still have another cav wing they could bring up and get a flank hit, or they could bring their heavier units forward, or they could try to duel things out with the Velites and dampen the blow. I'm not sure which one they're going to take. Well, the Latins decided to move their legions forward and try a little bit of an outflank with that. Unfortunately, the Velites are faster, so they were able to just fall back in front of them. So now you've got the Latin heavier units in the front row, possibly to be softened up by those Roman Velites. It doesn't make a lot of sense for the Latins to push their Velites forward at this point. I don't think they want to recharge their missiles, maybe recover a little bit. I was kind of hoping things would go a different way in some ways, because I wanted to bring the cav around, but now it's beginning to expose the Roman line here, so maybe this is going to work out well for the Latins. I'm not sure. I don't like not having the Velites in front, just because I think they should be in front. I'm not sure they really, I mean, that's the tactical doctrine of the time, right? But I'm not convinced that having them in front is really that great an idea. With all the leaders having initiative 3 pretty much, there's this real give and take as each player gets to move one command and then the next player gets to move a command. Unless, of course, somebody tries to trump in, but early in the battle that doesn't seem likely. So the next action that happened was the Romans launched half their cav and hit the flanks of the Latin cav, and they routed one off the map, taking one of their own units flying away, and sent the other one routed as well. Of course, they didn't get their momentum, so now they've got 2 cav sitting back here that didn't get activated, and the leader's not up with his other cav that's out there. It's probably not too big a deal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Manlius is unable to just trigger those cav, but I think the Romans gained a little bit of an advantage fighting over here. But now it's back on the Latins' turn. So, this is the end of the first turn in this battle. We gotta just keep track of losses. Try to explain what happened between what we saw. So that first line moved forward. We saw the Velites fall back. That was the last thing I think we discussed. The Romans did not move their line forward. They did work on readying their Velites for another round, and they've healed almost all of the points. That's the one exception. Likewise, the Latins worked on resuscitating their own Velite line, but they also moved both of their cohort lines forward. The cav moved forward into a position where it's perhaps threatening the flank. There's still a couple of the Samnite cav. Over here was more interesting because we had a die roll of doom effect, and Magnus was actually able to launch. No, that happened before. The Latins were able to launch an attack and hit one of, actually a couple of the units that Magnus had put into place. One got routed back. That may have happened earlier, but one got chased off the board. Chased a Roman off the board. And up here we have some Romans in pursuit. We also have each side having taken 5 tactical quality hits, which I'll mark down over on the oft-used sheet of scrap that I've got there. It's a tough battle in the sense, in terms of keeping track of things, because everything's Roman, and so, the Roman cav, the cav battle is especially hard to distinguish whose is this. Well, this one's a Roman one. These are not. that's kind of an annoyance in it, as well as some of the legionary colors. You know, they at least the two brown or brown and orange or whatever are on the same side, the pale orange tan. Anyway, the battle's not fully joined yet, but it looks like it's developing with both sides showing their strength. The Latins seeing the Cav moving forward, the Romans holding off but ready to smash in with their perhaps slightly heavier infantry. But the biggie they have in their favor right now are the Velites, and they're planning on using them. They kind of want to blunt that first attack with them. Beyond that, they're outnumbered and outcaved with the heavy stuff, so they may well have to do the sacrifice, as it were. Alright, I'm going to send this one up.